Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of The Shelf Conversation. Once again, my name is Kwame Osei-Owusu. I'm your host and I'm also the founder of The Shelf Conversation. As we bring to you always, all my episodes, I find it very exciting because it's not only about you watching, it's also about me learning something new about my guest that would also impact how I end up dealing with mental health related issue as well. And today we have got an exciting and we have got a very special guest. As I always say, my guests are special because they dedicate their time out of their busy life and also they are experts within their field. So today we're going to delve into the conversation. But before we delve into the conversation, please don't forget to subscribe onto the channel. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to post us on the post notification. And don't forget to like our comments. And also don't forget to comment as well, because it's really important. What you share with us or what you comment on, it helps us to actually get better with whatever we are saying. And you already know about the tradition of the Shelf Conversation. We start with a quote written by me. So it's Kwame's quote. So it's a quote. So today's quote is, "There is nothing small when it comes to winning. Quantifying your achievement or belittling it, that's nothing positive to you than lose your sense of accomplishment. So celebrate and be proud of yourself whilst you can, because life is really short." Okay, without wasting much time, we go straight and introduce our guest today. So our guest today is a clinical therapist. She is a TEDx speaker, a founder of SASA, which you're going to find what it stands for. She has interest in clinical justice and on the mission to educate others about the importance of empathy and mental health. She has been featured in Forbes, WebMD, and Fortune. She was shortlisted by the Merky Books Prize 2023, and she has worked in prisons, hospitals, and in community service. It's no other person than Jenny Okolo.
Thank you so much. Honestly,
I couldn't catch my breath when I was actually reading the profile. You've achieved a lot, and I would like to use my platform to appreciate everything that you were doing before you even start the conversation. You're doing amazing stuff, and keep going.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just keep going. So we'll go straight and delve into the conversation as it's a short conversation. Take us through your journey growing up in South London and schooling in South London. How was it like?
Ooh, it was very interesting. So actually, before South London came into the picture, I actually grew up in Belgium.
Oh, really?
Most people don't know that.
So do you speak French?
Dutch. I grew up on the Dutch side.
Sorry, that's not me. Sorry, my Dutch is not good, so I'm not even going to try.
Alles goed?
Ooh, I don't even understand what that means. I would have asked her, comment ça va?
Oh, no. Do you know what? I wish I grew up on the French side, but hey, here we are. So I came into this country in 2005. So I was about, how was I saying? Maybe 9 years old. And really it was because my mum wanted us to have a English education, you know, be able to read and write and all that kind of stuff.
So was that a conscious effort, decision that your mom actually took?
Yeah. Both my parents, they knew that. I mean, it's not that Belgium was terrible, but in terms of opportunities, it was definitely different to how it is here in the UK. So she wanted to bring us here with my 2 younger brothers. So yeah, when I came here, obviously I came to London, straight to Southeast London. And yeah, I suppose that's kind of really where my journey began. So I grew up on an estate. I actually grew up, I don't know if people know, but it's called Aylesbury Estate. And it is one of the most notorious estates.
I was about to ask that, because when it comes to South London and the estate, the notorious ones actually stand out, honestly speaking. But did that actually shape any way or form in terms of your schooling, your secondary school, the choice of your secondary school, your university? Did where you grew up actually end up shaping it?
Do you know what? I don't think it had much of... Obviously, I had my peers around me where I could see that maybe it, you know, impacted them negatively. So let's say being involved in like gang-related activities and stuff like that. But my mom was, I think, very intentional about ensuring that for me, especially because I'm the oldest, you know, I wasn't involved in any of that kind of stuff. So she would put me in classes. Like I went to ballet, I went to tap, all that kind of stuff. In terms of schooling as well, she made sure that she put me in one of the top schools in South London. Actually, I'll say my school actually beat some of the people even in private schools as well.
Sacred Hearts?
Yes! How do you know that?
Don't worry, part of the show is for me to drop
How do you know that?
all those kind of surprises. That's why it's called a shop conversation. I have to go and do my research. I have to come and sit in the couch and engage with my audience and my guests as well.
That's very good.
Yeah.
But
it's a Catholic school, right?
So at the time it was a Roman Catholic school.
And now the status has changed.
Yeah, I think it's changed slightly.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I think whilst it could have impacted me in a negative way in terms of where my environment was, I don't think it did. And I also took that as a way to not let that stop me from achieving what I wanted to achieve. Okay. But I was definitely privy, because of that's where I am, to, you know, some of the not so good things that occur on an estate. And, you know,
it's true, because I have actually had a fair share. I've not lived on an estate for long. I've lived on an estate for a short period of time, which even the decision for us to move over there, I was really scared, because similar situation as you, I'm also the elderly I'm the eldest. I say elderly, sorry. I'm the eldest among my brothers. So we've had a lot of stuff growing up on estates. I've seen a lot of people, how they interact and how they act. I also had that kind of big brother protection, making sure that my brothers do not fall within that company, because if that happens, I'll feel like I failed. So all the time, I was really, really cautious. But the best really happened. My brothers were not even really ready to even interact. They were always inside. Because before we went there, that thought I had, or what I've heard, it was a whole family kind of decision for us to take. Because I was like, nah, I don't want us, because I've heard a whole lot of stuff, and they are within that kind of age group that they could actually end up falling within that kind of space. So
how old were you at that time?
Oh, that time I was actually older. I've actually finished uni, so I have to just, you know, be around my mom, and in terms of their responsibilities, I have to take part in that kind of responsibility. So it was quite much of a tough decision. So they were not left at home alone. So I do actually share those kind of sentiments when you say how estate is like. It's not the most exciting, but if you get the good people around you, it doesn't actually tend to reflect on you. It also helps you to actually stand out, to become example of the kind of people who have lived on estate, but they didn't let the environment influence them negatively, but they took the positive inspiration and break the boundaries and the barriers, which is what you did, because we live in London, or in the whole of the UK. The moment we talk about estate, the negative connotations attached to it.
That's true.
It's so, like, people, when the moment we make mention of estate, there is a whole kind of idea or outlook that they're expecting from you. Oh, she's an estate girl, she does this, she does that, she does this. But once you turn out to actually end up change the narrative, it becomes a positive story, which is what you have actually ended up exhibited to us, and all the profile and everything I've read. You broke the barriers. You showed people that regardless of you living on the estate, you can actually end up, you know, letting your path be sharpened by where you live, but not actually let it reflect or influence the outcome of your goals.
No, I totally agree with you. And kind of like what you said about basically the negative stigma that's attached to living on estates. And, you know, I don't want to just focus on a negative aspect, because I think sometimes, like you said, when somebody finds out that you grow up on an estate or you live on an estate, automatically they have a perception of who you should be like, how you act, how you talk. I was never like that.
You talk?
You would not have guessed that I was from an estate, and it wasn't intentional. Just how I am. Yeah. But one thing I did really take from living in that kind of environment was just a sense of community. right? You know, everybody knew each other.
That's the thing.
Imagine you have community. Like tower blocks just facing each other, you know, maybe you live in a flat or whatnot, and your next door neighbor is literally right next to you. Exactly. So it's that sense of community that I think we should appreciate about living 100%. In these estates. And that's why, like, you know, with gentrification and you know, the government knocking some of these buildings down, I get it, like it's not fit for purpose. But I think when they are sort of rebuilding those estates back, it's to think about the community, think about the legacy that a lot of people have left, you know, in those spaces. Like, I'm talking about generations above us. So I try, like, before I used to shun, or I used to kind of hide the fact that I was from that particular estate. But now it's like I can see how that shaped me in ways that maybe was more to my subconscious, I would say. But yeah, definitely the sense of community. I remember going to the park, and yes, it wasn't always as safe, but you know, I made friends, and you know, had aunties cook for me, you know, that kind of stuff. Had parties, water fights. You know, it was. We had some good times.
Yeah. And I'm happy that you've drawn our attention to the sense of community, because as much as there is this negative stigma, the positive stigma is if mom or dad is not at home, you've got your neighbor, you can play with your friends, you can do your homework. You're not going to be left outside whereby you'll be thrown within the negative or the bad influence over there. So that sense of community is something that we will always appreciate.
Yeah.
Your neighbor is looking out for you. For example, when I was living with my mom at the estate, I remember there was one of the days in the evening, and that days it could have scarred us. I was in my room, and I could smell something burning, and we were the people on the first floor, and all of a sudden, the good thing is my window was opened, right? So the smoke and everything I could literally smell it from my room. So I quickly ran to the kitchen, and I was like, is there anything in our house that is causing that? Suddenly my mom came out from her room. It's like, I could hear people shouting downstairs. What could be it?
Yeah.
Then I looked downstairs, and lots of people standing over there, shouting, screaming, telling everybody, get down, there's fire, wow. There's fire. Then quickly, I actually grabbed everyone. I was like, let's go. Like, quickly we ran out of the house. Guess what? The fire was on our floor. Wow. It was the neighbor on the other side, but no one lives in that place. No, someone lives over there, but I think it was their kitchen, their food has caught fire. And man. We started running. And the fire brigade came through water, and it was a winter, so my brothers came out not wearing anything. The good thing is my car was parked, so I opened my car, got them to actually have some shelter before we end up actually getting out. Imagine there's no sense of community.
Yeah, that must have been traumatic.
It's traumatic. Everybody will actually step out there. Okay, I've left. I'm not going to actually call anyone. But that sense of community at that point in time, whether I talk to my neighbor, I don't, everybody stepped down and started screaming and calling out for their neighbor. So viewers, living on the estate, it's not always about the negative news. It's about some of the positivity that we could actually end up deriving from it. Your neighbor looking out for you, whereby if you are living in your own house, you might not end up actually getting, because in this country, you know that if you are underage, you cannot be left home alone, but your neighbor could actually end up taking you, providing you with food, providing you with shelter until your parents actually come. So just to take our point that estate living is not just always about having a negative influence, it's also about the positive stuff as well. So moving on, you went to secondary school, did your A-levels, and right now you have been accepted at university. Take us through the process between C's form, the transition from C's form to university. What made you choose the course you did, which is occupational therapy?
Okay, so in terms of the transition first. So luckily for me, the secondary school that I attended was attached to my sixth form. Yeah. So I was familiar with the teachers, some of my peers, a lot of my friends also went to the same sixth form. So that was nice. So my first year I studied, I studied religious studies, sociology and psychology. So I had an idea that I wanted to go into mental health, maybe become a psychologist, or I don't know, like I didn't have like strong thoughts about what exactly I wanted, but I knew it was around that field.
Is it due to environment, due to personal reasons? Yeah,
so I think, well, just going back to, you know, where I was living in the estate, right? So I saw a lot of people, including one of my neighbors as well, who clearly had mental health issues. And I remember always seeing the police coming to pick them up. He would start like shouting on the road, not aggressively like trying to attack you, but maybe shouting hello, like right in your face. So that was
trying to get attention of people,
get your attention, and that was his way of communicating as well. So I think that was sort of my first experience of like, you know, knowing what mental health was, and also seeing the gaps as well. Like I saw so many black people who were like that, and it didn't seem like they
come to that.
were getting the support. So I think with that experience, and then I guess, you know, watching TV shows, I remember I don't know if you remember Waterloo Road back in my time.
Waterloo Road, it sounds familiar because I was not actually really into a lot of TV shows. Was it on ITV or channel? Was it BBC?
Oh my god, I don't even know.
You don't remember? Because it sounds familiar. Waterloo Road sounds familiar. It sounds like a show that I might have watched, but I didn't religiously follow.
It was my thing. Like you could not, my eyes were glued to the TV, and it was based on like school and school experiences. But it was one of the first times that I'd come across like on TV psychosis being spoken about, and how psychosis how it manifests and how it can present itself. So with all that in mind, I think that's why I knew I wanted to go into the mental health space. So like I said, I studied those subjects in my first year of A-levels, and I failed.
Let's talk about
Imagine you're so passionate about a subject, right? And
that'll be the first blow hit at you.
Yeah. And the one that I actually failed in, so my two other subjects were okay. It was psychology.
And that's the one you enjoy.
I enjoyed it. So imagine, I was like, how am I failing this when I actually enjoy it? I thought I understood it. But yeah, so that put me down, and I was thinking, oh gosh, maybe this isn't it for me. I went to look at maybe BTEC. Me and one of my friends was actually in the same situation as me. So we went to like different colleges to see if there's another course that we can do. But actually my teachers at the sixth form encouraged me to repeat a year and said, look, it's not the end of the world. You can still do what you want to do.
I share similar sentiments.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
I share similar sentiments.
It's humbling, isn't it?
It is humbling. With me, it was not even the teachers who took that decision, right? With me, I felt like, no, I need to correct this before I move on. Because I could have taken my 3 subjects and it's like, you know what, I'm good because I did 4.
Okay.
But I was looking at myself like, nah, that would be a scar. I can't actually end up later on in life thinking that I really failed this and I moved on. It's like, nah, I need to come back and correct it.
Yeah.
People are like, no, you're mad. I was like, no, I'm not. I know what I'm talking about. Because funny thing is, I didn't even need that particular subject for my university degree. Okay. But I thought that if any conversation pops up in future regarding my future choices, they can use that to penalize me. So let me go back and correct it.
Wow.
So it's humbling.
It's
humbling at the same time tiring, because it's like you're drained.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So just coming to the realization that, okay, these are my options. I didn't really want to do BTEC. I wanted to do my A-levels. So I said, you know what? Okay, I'm going to repeat my year. I swapped out psychology for graphic design.
I said, is it communications?
Yeah, I said, there's no way I could fail this.
Yeah.
And, obviously year 13 comes, you start prepping for university.
Personal statement.
And I had a conversation with the head of year at the time, and before that I'd already looked on the NHS website just to look at what kind of subjects or career professions could I go into. So I came across occupational therapy. Now the reason why I was so interested in it is because I felt like I could be creative with the type of role that it is, and it's all about meaningful occupations, the way that we provide our therapy. So I spoke to one of the heads of year about this, and he was like, "Oh, well, my wife's friend is an occupational therapist." I was like, "Can I speak to her? Can I shadow her?"
God, that's
imagine me like wide-eyed and everything. And he was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." So lo and behold, he sorted it out for me. I went to go and shadow her. I think it was like an inpatient stroke unit. And I absolutely loved it. I was like, wow. And as I kept on doing more research, I was like, oh wow, they can work in mental health settings, they can work in prisons, they can work in schools. I was like, I need to do a degree where if I want to change my mind, I can just change my mind and work in different fields. So that really helped. And the lady as well also helped me with my personal statement, just because I was the only person who was going to do it. Like none of my other teachers knew what the hell occupational therapy was, right? So I did that, applied for university. I got into my first choice, which was Oxford Brookes University, and that's kind of how it began from there.
I've got a family friend. I'll not even say family friend, I'll say she's even family. She goes there.
Really?
And she's also studying occupational therapy.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It didn't click until just now. We're just having this conversation.
It's a small world.
She's now on her placement. So yeah, definitely I'll keep you guys in touch.
Yeah.
She's at Oxford Brookes as well. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So we've made mention of the journey, which you've made mention of some of the setbacks that you experienced. And I believe at that time, did you take it as a setback, or you thought you actually saw it as, God might be redirecting my path? Because let's say if you went ahead, you passed psychology, might you have actually come across someone who have actually been in that profession to help you to shadow, to help you write your personal statement and all of these for you to get your first choice, So sometimes it's very... We will not understand the ways of God, honestly speaking. We will never understand it. Some of these setbacks comes to clear the path for us. It does not come to obstruct it, because sometimes you need that clear path. God just needs to clear it, It doesn't know. We don't even know. Maybe if you did psychology, you'd have been torn in between which pathway you want to go.
Yeah.
But God cleared it. Make sure that you choose something else and lead you straight to your purpose, which is what you are actually living today. So it comes back to the quote I started with, the little wins that you actually end up celebrating, how it ends up sharpening and shaping your path. Because most often, I used to be one of those people. Anything happens to me, I was like, why me?
Yeah.
Like, why me? To the point of, I don't even want to hear it. I just want to shy away from it. But after some years, I thought about it. I'm like, what? Right now, it's not going to be why me. It's just going to be about, what is this trying to teach me? What is God trying to show me through this pitfall that I've actually had? Is he trying to make me stronger? Is he trying to tell me that this is not my path? So it's a powerful comeback.
Yeah.
It is a powerful comeback. And after those, you end up having some mad level of courage, I believe.
Yeah.
No, you're not afraid of, hitting on the ground, because you know how you're going to come back, because you've got a story to tell. You've got a story to reflect on, that if I've gone through XYZ and I've come back, definitely it's going to work this time around. So well done for actually making it through to that stage. And how was life at Oxford Brookes?
Well, so, as you can imagine, Oxford is very different from South London, right? And I knew it was going to be that way, and
completely
that was
opposite environment.
Exactly. And that was one of the reasons why I picked Oxford Brookes as well. And
rather than a London university.
Rather than a London, I wanted to be out. It's not too far either, and I wanted a different environment, because like you said, what happened during sixth form. Initially, it was a setback to me.
Yeah.
or it felt like a setback, but I was able to bounce back from it. And I think that gave me the push to kind of like just keep going, focus. It gave me the confidence as well to kind of look within myself and like my power. So yes, everything is about, well, at the time it's about your A levels, getting into university, but I knew that I wanted to be beyond just that. So I started like applying for leadership programs. I made a promise to myself as well that because confidence was also a big issue for me just throughout secondary school, just most of my life, right? I made a promise that when I go to university, that's going to change. Not necessarily change my personality or anything like that, but I was going to become more bold and I was going to step into my power. So that was another reason why I chose that university. So yeah, went into Oxford, and you know, of course, in terms of diversity, it's not as much as London. And I knew that was going to be the case, but I didn't realize I was going to be the only black person on my course. I was like, actually,
repeat what you just said?
Yes, only black person on my course. There was one that I saw, but she was a master's student, so she was already going to finish soon.
So you were the only bachelor's?
Yeah. And I was like, wow. And that's when I realized how white of a profession occupational therapy is. It's a very white profession. But you know what? I was like, listen, nothing's going to stop me. So again, that confidence that I built from sixth form carried me through.
Exactly.
So
that even gives you the power to be able to define it, the power and the pull, because being over there makes you even an ambassador to even end up amplifying your voice to tell other people about what this course is. We need more representation. We need more black people on board. So please get on board. And they will look at you. So you will always become the run-to person for people to come and now seek more advice, more knowledge, more awareness of what it entails. I'm honest with you, I didn't know what an occupational therapist does until when did I even end up? I think until I started working with occupational therapists.
All right, yeah.
As part of my role as a pharmacist, working in a mental health ward and also working in a adult and elderly ward frailty, that's when I ended up knowing the inside out of what occupational therapists actually end up doing. I will come back to the role.
Yeah,
it's
your I mean, your story, then you know, I just hit the ground running. I really enjoyed it. It was challenging. I mean, I'm not a fan of like anatomy, physiology anyway. But I passed it all. I was like, yes. Made friends. I was part of ACS, so I was got nominated as the careers officer.
ACS.
And again, like you could not have told me this in, you know, 14, 15-year-old me that I was going to do these stuff. So all of this was intentional. Me putting myself out there was intentional. So yeah, as you go on placement as well. So I went on 3 placements, 2 of which were mental health placements, which I absolutely enjoyed. And I was saying before earlier that my final placement was at Broadmoor Hospital.
Where's that?
So that's in Bracknell area. So it's the UK's highest security maximum hospitals. Mental health hospitals. Most people think Broadmoor is a prison. It is not a prison. It's a psychiatric hospital. It's just unfortunately the way the media portray it.
Because I'll be honest with you, sometimes whenever you're going to some of these mental health wards, the security of how they've built the fences, it draws your attention that why this maximum security? But people do not understand that there are different I don't want to say levels, but there are different intensities.
I mean, there are different levels, though.
There are different levels.
Yeah, absolutely. There are different levels, and the security is not just to protect people from others, but also from themselves as well. Yes. And, you know, as professionals, as you know, we try to work in the least restrictive way possible. But at times, especially if you work in a forensic setting, which is what I ended up doing, for safety, you do have to make sure there's certain measures in place in terms of security. It can be daunting for people who go in for the first time, and even for patients themselves. It can be very daunting. So I can see that, and I hope that, especially in the design of these hospitals in the future, that they consider that as well. Consider a way to not make it look as daunting, but still keep that security element
over there. Yeah. If you're still watching this is the short conversation that I'm having with Jenny Okolo. You haven't missed much. Even if you have missed, take a pause and rewind. But just letting you know that this is the short conversation with Jenny Okolo. So Jenny, we've made mention of it. You've gone through your A-levels. You've had your pitfalls. You've bounced back successfully. Got accepted in Oxford Brogues. Got onto occupational therapy. You are loving it and everything. Someone might be asking, what at all does an occupational therapy do? Like, what does the role entail?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Mm-hmm. I always find it, I'm finding it a bit easier now, but I used to find it difficult to answer this question just because it really also depends on what setting you work in.
We'll come to the settings that you've worked, because you have worked in a wider array of the different capacities that your services needed. So we will break it down and actually get through to all the different settings that you've actually worked in.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in terms of a definition, I would say an occupational therapist supports someone to get either back to their independence, mm-hmm. or support them in, with meaningful occupations to help their physical or mental health. Okay. And as most people think of therapists as like talking therapy and things like that. We do that, but we focus on occupations. Mm-hmm. And most people, when they think of occupations, they think of work. No, actually, even having a hobby, what we're doing here is an occupation. Going out for a walk is an occupation. Being able to dress yourself is an occupation. So those are the different aspects of your daily activities that we look at. And oftentimes when somebody has a physical health condition, like maybe a stroke or something, they might not be able to do those things again. So we help in using graded activities to get that person to their optimal level. Same with mental health. If they go through a psychosis or, whatever, maybe they've been in hospital for so long, they don't know how to reintegrate back into society. So we help them, in that aspect to make sure that not only is the public safe, but they are also safe. So that's why I say it really depends on what setting you work in. But yes, we support people with their independence through meaningful occupations.
Fantastic. And you have actually worked in different settings straight after uni. So straight after uni, you go into employment, I believe, because you actually started working. Where was the first place that you worked at? Was it the community, was it hospital, or was it the prison settings?
So my first job post-university was on a medium secure inpatient unit, assertive rehabilitation, men's, and so how I got that job was because in my second placement I did at that place as well. So I went back to them saying,
so it was easy for you to just
once I saw a vacancy, it was easier for me because I loved it so much. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think I spent about 2 years there. Okay. And it was amazing. Like, it's challenging, yes. I know it seems like I'm, bigging it up and everything. No, but it is challenging. Like, yes, sometimes there are incidences on the ward, and sometimes you're working with someone, you think you're making progress and go back a step. Like, that happens. But I just felt so much fulfillment in working in this type of setting. And you know what? I'm the sort of person that I don't like to be bored. I like to be kept active. Surprise me. I need things moving. Like, I need noise. I need all of that kind of stuff. Hence why I also worked in that environment. So I had a whole ward to myself in the capacity of an occupational therapist. So I think I maybe had about 11 patients, 11 to 12 patients. Average stay was maybe like around a year or so. And these people were maybe coming from acute or PQ settings where they were getting a bit more stable and just needed that rehabilitation. Yeah,
fantastic. And from that role, you've had the opportunity of working at the Her Majesty prisons at that time. You worked at the Her Majesty Prison and Probation Service as an occupational therapist. What informed that decision that let me actually go and work there? Was it something intentional that you chose, or it was because you felt like you want to take more challenge and study it? Because if we link it back to where you what you made mention of where you grew up, whereby you saw a male outside of always at the bar station trying to actually shout to get people's attention, and if you look at the population of the number of males who actually end up in prison in this country, was it an informed decision that you have to actually make, or was it a vacancy, as you made mention of the previous job, that came that, you know what, let me just go and actually find out what goes on over there? Which one was it?
Definitely the first one, where you know, I was definitely intentional about the fact that I wanted to learn beyond just my current setting. So, you know, I'm quite a curious person. So yes, I'm working inpatient, but I was also wondering, like, what's happening in the community? The people that, you know, we're sending the people from inpatient into the community. I wanted to know what's happening on the other side. So I actually did a bit of work in the community too. Yeah. And because, you know, with forensics, you're working with MOJ, so Ministry of Justice, alongside them usually, right? I also wanted to know, you know, the people that we were getting from prison, what actually happens in prisons, what kind of services are out there, you know. So I think a combination of curiosity, but also, like you said, as I was, you know, progressing, having a bit more understanding of, you know, why there's so many black people around me in terms of patients, right? Why so many black men especially being sectioned? I just wanted to understand the roots. So I always knew that I wanted to work in a prison one day. So, you know, I did my rotation. I worked in the community and things like that. And yeah, I suppose a vacancy then came up. I was also going up in my banding, so in a more leadership position as well. So a vacancy came up to be the therapy manager there, and I was like, do you know what, let me just try it. If I don't get it, I don't get it, but let me just try. And they took me on, and again, it was a good experience, but it was probably one of my most challenging jobs.
What made it challenging? Was it just seeing people from your community over there, or was it that there was abuse from the inmates who were always coming at you, shouting abusive words at you? Which one made it challenging? Because with me, sometimes I feel emotional when I'm working on a mental health ward, because some of the patients, I just look at them and I tend to empathize. I'm like, what if this was me?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think it was a combination. I think the first thing that I'll need to address is that there are a lack of resources when it comes to mental health anyways, but in a prison it's even less. So I had a tiny team, like it was just the 3 of us. Then it ended up just being 2 of us. And imagine, so I'm the lead occupational therapist there, and my waiting list is like 200, 300 plus. There's 1,000 plus prisoners in this prison, right? So, and also it was a Cat B prison too, so there were loads of them there. So the pressures of the waiting list, the pressures of the risk, right? So yes, there is that abuse aspect. There's, you know, the physical abuse, not that I was impacted too much in regards to that, but it's still there. And then also we were coming in, so I was employed by the NHS, but I was working in MOJ setting, right? Yeah. So I'm having to learn about the prison regime. It's not the same as being in hospital.
It's not.
It's not the same. I'm here saying, oh yeah, so they were telling me, okay, we need to redecorate the day center to make it more therapeutic. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I need this, I need that. The governors are looking at me like, no. What's this girl talking about? So I had to learn the lingo. I had to learn how different things work, because I'm going into their world now.
It's true.
You know? You know, and again, I saw, not that I didn't expect it, but still, I was still shocked to see so many black and ethnic minority people who were clearly unwell, but did not have any previous history of a diagnosis. A lot of them I could see that maybe they were neurodiverse. I'm like, why are they here? Like, you know? So again, that just got me thinking, like, what are we doing? It's almost like I honestly felt that I was maybe in the bubble when I was in inpatient wards, or when I was in the community. I was living that cushy life. When I got into prison, I was like, wow, this is not a joke.
It's a different ball game altogether, because it's it's now you are in a world whereby you're dealing with tougher patients, we put it that way, because the patients have come with their problem. You're trying to help them, but they don't see you as someone trying to help them.
Yeah, I think there's that in a sense of the stereotypes and the stigma that's attached to mental health. So I did have a lot. So as a men's person, I had a lot of men who maybe I was due to see, but weren't really keen on seeing me because I'm a therapist. What are their mates gonna say if they see me rocking up, to their cell? They might not even answer me. So it took a while for me to, see how I could approach people. From what I say, and obviously the cells are tiny as well, right? It's very narrow too. It's literally what you see on TV. So just slowly trying to change that perception and speaking to some of the prisoners as well, like how do you want to be approached, like learning from them too, I think was really key. But another thing as well, which maybe some people might not know, is that the Mental Health Act does not apply in prison, meaning that yes, you might identify someone to be mentally unwell, but if they refuse medication or treatment, you can't enforce the Mental Health Act whilst they're there.
Which means how we give patients and assess them in terms of their capacity to make a decision when they go to the prison, we don't even take into account. You do take that into account 100%, like capacity assessments, all that kind of stuff, and people do give mental health psychotic medication, right? But in terms of if somebody refuses, which is possible, they refuse medication, right? So that's something that I couldn't wrap my head around. And when it was explained to me in terms of that's why they transfer people from prison to secure psych hospitals. So if they refuse it, what step do they take to make sure that they take the medication?
So they would be transferred under a section, I think 47, I believe. Don't quote me on this, well, I should know.
Yeah.
I think it's a section 47, but the RC, the psychiatrist,
yes.
And also with the assessment of other people, so I would go in to assess as well, would come to that decision to say, look, they cannot be in this prison because they're not accepting medication. They need to get the help that they need. So they'll make that transfer from prison to a psych hospital under the section. And sometimes they go back when they're a bit more well, or sometimes they continue maybe in the community, whatnot. So it's all these different intricacies that I needed to learn quite quickly as well, because it is fast paced. But yeah, like I said, it was challenging. Even like take my job, like put my job to the side, even just being in that setting
I can actually imagine, because as I said, I was sitting in ward round, which in mental health settings, instead of you going to the patient's room, they would rather be brought by the nurse into the room, and the doctors will start actually assessing them here and there. Even me being in that room, one time I was bodily present, but in my head, the thoughts that were going through my head, there was a whole lot. I was just observing the patient, and it felt like I started thinking, and it started making me start have some level of empathy. And there was one of the patients whose mom was there. I actually all of a sudden put my feet in the mom's shoe. How is she feeling? And these are some of the things that sometimes a lot of people do not actually get to know about the jobs that we do, about the settings. Because you're 9 to 5, you see someone, yes, they are actually within the custody of the government, right? And their rights have been taken away from them. But at the same time as well, they're humans. They will develop conditions. A doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist, an occupational therapist have to look after them. How are those people managing these people? Because any form of anger, any form of resistance is going to be directly thrown at those people.
Yeah.
And it becomes very, very hard, honestly speaking. But in terms of that, in those settings, did you receive support? When I mean support, did you have pastoral care whereby you have someone to speak to make sure that some of the difficulties and the challenges that you are facing on your work on a daily basis, someone will help you to, breathe through it, and also put your mental health into consideration?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, I did have, or we as a team, the teams that I was in did have that support. So, you know, as you know, after maybe an incident or something, you should have a debrief. Obviously, different settings will vary. Like, for example, in prison, it was a bit more difficult because it was a smaller team and everyone was kind of separate. But I think I found that I needed to ensure that the life that I had outside of my 9 to 5, you know, also gave me that comfort mentally as well. So that's why I was talking about the setting. Like, you know, I had my 9 to 5. Sometimes I couldn't even go outside for a break because of how many doors I had to open and unlock. The journey was too long.
It's a lot.
You know, it was way too long.
Because everything is about security. If you forget to lock that door and one of the inmates find their way there, know that
for you. So
you're actually done.
You have to be like, you become hyper vigilant, right? But
did that have any effect on you later on, like moving on in your work? Did you become very hyper vigilant? 100%. Any little thing. Let me just check. Is it done?
And even now, I mean, I'm not in this setting now, but even like when I go into rooms, I make sure my back's not facing against, you know, by the wall. Not by the wall. I'm closest to the door, because that's what they teach you. Always, if you're in a room with a patient, be closest to the door so that you can escape when you need to, right? So it's little things like that. And yeah, I think it's definitely sort of creeps into my life outside. Life.
But to a certain degree too, it's a form of also, how do I say it? A defense opportunity for you. Because if we are in this room and then any of those kind of stuff is meant to happen, you know your way out.
Yeah.
Compared to any of us, because you're so hyper vigilant, you're able to read a room and know that much security is needed over here. Because if I don't put myself first, I don't secure myself, the next moment is going to be a danger. So in a certain way, involuntarily, you become very hyper vigilant, and in such an environment, maybe because of my next rotation, hopefully, maybe I may end up actually developing that. It will have its own positives, because I don't want it to be something that we say is negative, meaning that any little thing that you do, I'm actually cautious, I'm actually aware of it. But the positive thing is, all the time, I'm actually, I'm in my defense, or I'm in my, would you say it's a fight or flight?
Fight or flight? I don't think it's gotten to that extent.
Okay.
I think it's just being more aware of people and their behaviors. And like you said, it's not always like a negative thing. So for example, if you're looking at the more positive aspect, the conversations that I've been able to have with friends, colleagues, other people in the community around mental health, especially within the Black community, I feel like I'm able to bring my clinical expertise, but also just as a human being who's learned a lot over those years, just being more open about, you know, maybe psychosis, for example. You know, I try to talk as much as possible about psychosis, not just the clinical aspect, but also the fact that people can live good, meaningful lives in the community, even whilst having that. And I always tell people, because that's something that shocked me a lot. Some of the first patients that I had, like when I looked at their history, some of them were lawyers, doctors, business people, and I was like, how is this possible?
How did life over 10?
Do you understand? And that just showed me that this could happen to anyone. Nobody is exempt. It's not just because somebody's taking drugs. Yes, that can cause psychosis or mental health problems, but there's other things as well. There's trauma, there's environment, there's so many different factors that can cause somebody to become unwell. And I think being able to take that and preach that out to other people who might feel like, oh my gosh, why me, and blah, 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 and actually show them that there is hope at the end of the tunnel and give them that empathy. I think it's a positive that I can take from my work in these type of maybe challenging settings.
Yeah. Fantastic. And thank you for sharing these. Honestly speaking, like as we were speaking, it's really, really opened my eyes about certain things that we need to actually consider when it comes to life of people who are living in prison for the crime that they've committed, how the environment also ends up having the effect on them, and who is actually looking out, who is actually ended up helping them in those kind of settings. And it could be very traumatic.
Yeah.
It could be very, very traumatic, but we don't talk about this. So it's only on the shelf conversation that we would actually end up opening up to have these kind of conversation, to open your eyes, open your ears, and also open your other senses to make you start to think about how certain experiences could actually lead someone to end up in a certain place, and even could get worse, and they might not even end up coming back.
I would even, just sorry to interrupt, I would even say open your heart as well.
We'll come to the empathy bit.
Yeah,
it will definitely come.
I'm definitely.
Jenny is actually really ahead of yourself. It's really ahead of yourself. If you're watching this is the Shelf Conversation. If you're listening to this is the Shelf Conversation with Jenny Okolo today, who is my guest, and we are actually delving into more conversations which started on a very steady slow, talking about her upbringing, and right now we've reached the emotional stage, but no one is crying because we are here to actually learn. And if any of these conversations is having an effect on you, it's actually triggering some traumatic part, we're going to actually put some links and also put some numbers on this conversation to make sure that you actually get the best support that you can get, because we are here to enlighten our community and enlighten ourselves about the need for us to talk about mental health, and we're going to take it through different settings as well. So Jenny, before we actually came for this conversation, I was just reading online, right? Because as both of us are scientists, we're coming from science background, we like to actually read about studies of some of the researches that has been done within this kind of area. And strange enough, it really befits the environment that you have actually learned. You have actually worked. And this is a studies that was done by Robert Motley and Andrea Banks in America, and it was a paper that was published on PubMed in 2018, and it's titled Black Males, Trauma and Mental Health Service Use. And it's actually a systematic review, which the objective of their studies was to systematically review the evidence of and synthesizing results from relevant studies that has examined barriers and facilitators to professional mental health service use for Black male trauma survivors aged 18 and above. So the method that they used was they did a thorough search of selected databases, and they carefully considered of inclusion and exclusion criteria yielded a final 6 studies for detailed review. And the results that they came up, or they actually ended up having, was that Black male trauma survivors were significantly less likely to be utilizing mental health services than other sex ethnic groups. And these are some of the reasons why what they gave. They said it's because of high levels of daily crisis, which was one of them. 2, the lack of knowledge of steps to obtain services. 3, occupational disability. And the findings is very shocking, I'll be honest with you. It says that 56 to 74% of Black males exposed to traumatic events may have an unmet need for mental health services. 62% have directly experienced a traumatic event in their lifetime. 72% has witnessed a traumatic event, and 59% have learned a traumatic event involving a friend or family members. And this actually is talking about Black male. What have you got to say about that?
Wow, very powerful results. I'll say I'm not too surprised, because I can see this. It reflects some of the conversations that I do have with a lot of my patients, friends, family, and I would say there's probably even more factors that haven't really been researched into enough in terms of Black mental health. But especially when it comes to trauma, for Black men who've experienced it, I think the first thing that was really interesting is speaking to or working with black men who didn't even identify the fact that they did have any trauma. So whether that's to do with like things that might have happened in their family, but even like, you know, let's say gang related activities, right, that they may have been involved in when they were younger. And I remember speaking to I guess a young guy, like early 20s, and he was diagnosed with PTSD, and he was like, I don't have PTSD. What do you mean? I'm not a soldier, blah, blah. I was like, no, you've got the wrong impression of what PTSD is. About, post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And what it's referring to in his case is the fact that, you know, your experience being in the gang, being you know, seeing your friends being killed, the trauma, your family as well, that's part of PTSD.
Which we don't talk about.
They don't talk about. And I think it's also the stigma of the label that something is wrong with them. So yes, I think even just being able to identify or accept that they have trauma or, you know, experience trauma is quite difficult for them. And then you mentioned something about occupational disability as well, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, just in terms of societal pressures around, you know, the man has to be, you know, you've got to get your job, earn a lot of money, all that kind of stuff, head of the family. A lot of men become the head of the family at a young age as well, maybe if their fathers aren't around or, you know, for whatever reason. And is that pressure of trying to make sure everyone's okay but themselves is something, again, that's another thing that comes up a lot. So I'll be honest, I sometimes I do find it difficult to work with black men, although that's what I've been doing, like
that's the majority what you're doing,
But the reason why I say this is because even as a black woman, I still cannot share that same experience because I'm a woman, you know. And even if I was a black man, like you know, you're, you know, nuance, you all have different experiences, and it's quite difficult because a lot of men tend to, you know, suppress, and it's only maybe at like the last minute, or if something unfortunately happens, is when you be able to see, okay, this person was depressed all along, or this person had this all along, you know. So it's really sad.
It's easy for us to actually end up, you know, hiding that kind of true feelings, because hardly would a black man actually end up saying that no all the time. Yes, it's a yes. Oh yeah, don't worry, I'll fix it. Meanwhile, he might not have the capacity, because he or she may feel like, oh, it's because if I end up not fulfilling it, it's like I didn't fulfill my duty or something. So it's a lot that we can actually end up doing over there. But in such a situation, how important is it for society, especially the black community, to consider therapy sessions after difficult or traumatic experience in different stages of life?
Yeah, 100%. I would always recommend, and having therapy doesn't need to have it doesn't need to be complex. It can just be having a conversation with someone. As therapists, our job isn't always to problem solve. Sometimes it's just to listen, give that person a safe space to tell their story, share their experiences, and just listen. You know, that's the key thing to becoming a therapist. So yeah, 100%, especially, it doesn't even have to be after a traumatic event, just in general. Just in general, if you feel a type of way, or you just feel like you want to share with somebody, I think that's important, because we need to be able to normalize vulnerability in that sense. So yeah.
Awesome. And as a founder of SASA, which is a mental health and neurodiversity entrepreneurship role that you've actually taken for yourself, can you take us through what SASA means and what service does SASA provide?
Yes, thank you. So SASA Health, you nicely described it there already. It actually means to aid in Japanese.
To aid in Japanese.
Yeah, so it's all about supporting people, like you said, with neurodiversity needs and mental health as well. And how we do that is through screenings and assessments. And the reason why this came about is because, like I said, you know, I enjoy what I do for the most part, but I also know that I serve a much bigger purpose, and you know, and that is to help people. and we'll go specifically into which people. It's my community, the Black community. So I created this because I wanted to give people a way to kind of learn about, you know, some of their experiences, to ask questions. And even though this is open to, you know, all races, part of what we do is that in reach into the community, into schools, talking to families of, you know, Caribbean and African backgrounds, because again, mental health is still a taboo. Neurodiversity is just being recognized, and even then, you know, when somebody talks about neurodiversity, I hear about ADHD, ASD, and I always say, but there's more. There's so many other conditions. Dyscalculia, dyspraxia, you know, there's so many others. And I think we as health professionals, it is our duty to educate people. You know, they talk about the rise in, you know, social media and people self-diagnosing themselves, right? And, you know, I, of course, 100% only a health professional should diagnose and give that support. But I feel like if this is what they're doing, clearly there is a cry for help. People are saying, oh, I experienced this, I experienced that. Then we need to be able to jump on, whether it's on social media, and make sure that we're providing all these facts and dismantling anything that's untrue, obviously to keep people safe. So with SASA Health, we do consultations, we do assessments, and yeah, it's growing, and you know, it's reaching bigger and bigger capacities.
Awesome. Fantastic that you're using your platform SASA to actually end up enrich your community with great mental health education, and also helping with the screening. Due to time, we are not going to just leave this platform without celebrating you, because over the past years, you've actually done amazing stuff. You've actually got opportunity to lead a TEDx NHS talk, which was in 2022.
Yeah, and it came out in 2023.
And it came out in 2023. So let's say technically we got to see it in 2023, which was basically last year. And I personally watched the 10 minutes clip. I felt like that 10 minutes was a compression of a lifelong kind of situation, but you have to use 10 minutes. And it was really touching how you ended up presenting it. There were so many facts, and there was so many relatable information that I believe a lot of people who are watching this will be able to actually relate. If you have not actually seen it, I'm gonna put the link within the bio session of this show of conversation, so that you can actually have the experience of watching it. It's powerful, and go show support to Jenny Okolo and the amazing work that she's actually done, because that time the topic is how far can empathy go. I was emotionally invested in that talk, because whilst you were saying that, I started actually internally searching through and assessing how empathetic I am, which with me I'm mostly but I'm like, how far, as you said, how far can your empathy go, which throughout your story you have been empathizing with a lot of people in your work settings in the community, your work settings in the hospital, your work settings, especially in prison, seeing men from your community, majority of them ending up, majority of the patients coming from that kind of settings, is really empathetic. So I'll give you your flowers whilst you are on this show, honestly speaking. And also one other fantastic achievement that Jenny was recognized for was to actually be recognized by the Potential, let me get it right. The Potential Unlock Awards. She was actually awarded the Thought Leader of the Year, which is another one that she was celebrated for. How did you feel? Even before you answer that question, myself and Jenny were in the same category for is it medicine something?
Medical trailblazer.
Medical trailblazer. We were in the same category, and I kid you not, I went to actually search on all the people within that category, their profile, and it's amazing. On record, I was the only male over there, and the rest were females, and I was happy that all the amazing females within that category with me were doing amazing stuff. So when Jenny got the Thought Leader of the Year award, I was happy for her, and it helped me to actually explore more about her story. And this is what we've discussed on this couch. How did you feel like getting these two opportunities, TEDx and being celebrated by the Potential Unlocked Awards?
Honestly, it's amazing, and it always takes me back to, again, when I was in sixth form and I made that decision to just keep pushing and putting myself in these spaces and just trying. So every time I receive an accolade or an achievement, I know it's of the result of me really pushing for it, and nothing comes easy, and it just helps me to keep going as well. And again, I mean, kudos to you as well, just being in the same room and being recognized, you know, amongst so many amazing people. It just shows me that yes, I'm doing something right. You know, so yeah, it's an amazing feeling, and onto bigger and better things.
Awesome. And definitely Jenny is actually doing something right. She's been doing something right from the past into the present, and the future ahead. We know that there are amazing stuff that her name is going to be attached to. Sadly, this is where our time will give us the opportunity to have this conversation too. I wish we could actually end up speaking more. But thank you very much, Jenny, for giving us this opportunity to delve into your journey as the young woman or the young girl born in Belgium, come to South London, go to explore Oxford, come out, be able to change lives, be able to end up become resilient, and to be able to fight against all the odds from where you're coming from, to be getting recognition, jumping on amazing platforms to speak, and still being resilient to still make a difference with SASA. All that we could say is congratulations and good luck, and thank you for sitting with us to actually have this amazing conversation. But before we go, where can we find you to follow your journey more and support the work that we do, and even book you for the amazing speaking opportunities that you actually end up offering?
Amazing, thank you so much. So you can find me on Instagram at Jen Okolo, on Twitter at Jen Okolo, on LinkedIn. I'm more active on LinkedIn, to be honest, Jenny Okolo. And with SASA, it's the website is www.wearesasa.com. Instagram is wearesasa. And yeah, just hit me up. Like I said, LinkedIn is where I'm mainly at, and I'm always happy to have discussions with people.
Fantastic. And I'm going to put the link of where you can find Jenny on the description and the bio of this talk, on both our video audio visual, and also our video version of this conversation. Thank you very much for sticking with us on the Shelf Conversation. Up until next time, have a great time and adios. Thank you.